I am Daniel Lucas, and welcome to Book 101. Book 101 is all about the books that I read for the last 40 years. And today I have my special guest. She is a TEDx speaker, a lawyer, climate change expert in the area of international law, author of the book Dirty Network, a climate change activist, no other than Miss Anita Margaret Halvorssen. Welcome to Book 101, Miss Anita, and can you please introduce yourself?
Yes, hello, Daniel. My name is Anita Margaret Halvorssen, and I'm actually from Norway, but I've lived in the US for many years. I'm an international lawyer, director of global legal. I've been teaching law and writing on environmental issues, especially climate change. And then as I was teaching at University of Denver, global climate change law, I realized that many people outside the classroom were not aware of what climate change actually was. So I thought, well, I think I should get to a bigger audience. So I thought I should write a novel. So that's what I did. And then after that, I decided, well, doing a TEDx talk, you might reach even more people. So my talk has 69,000 viewers. So I thought, well, that's good. So yes, and I loved writing this thriller, The Dirty Network. And it's for my children because I'm really worried about climate change and future generations because we're not addressing it fast enough.
Yes, certainly, Miss Anita, and thank you for sharing to the world. Are we late for saving the world?
We have a lot of the right solutions. We have a lot of good solutions, but we're not addressing it fast enough. So we need a lot more collective action. Individual action is wonderful, but if we don't get collective action, as in governments and everybody gets involved, then we are behind, and it'll be a lot more extreme weather events. And that's not good with droughts and floods and all of this terrible stuff that's wildfires and such.
What do you think the first steps to combat climate change?
First of all, people have to be informed and know that it's actually getting worse, and we're still emitting carbon dioxide by burning fossil fuels. That's the prime driver of human-caused climate change. So that's what we have to reduce. And we do have renewable energy possibilities with solar panels and windmills and offshore wind and all of that. So there are alternatives and they're available. The technology's there. And then we have batteries so you can store it, because that's been the big problem before, because you say it doesn't blow all the time and the sun's not out all the time. But we do have now batteries are getting better and better. So we just have to get on with it and then get incentives so there's more choices so people can actually buy electric cars and such.
Do you think the cause why we are behind our goals to combat climate change?
So that's the fossil fuel industry that has had, I mean, this has been our major source of energy forever. And it's really hard to change. And a lot of the industry is not interested in real big change because they want to squeeze out however much money they can the way it is, which is unfortunate. So then there's a lot of misinformation that's been out there. So people thought that this wasn't a problem for a long time. Now we realize it because we're seeing it all around us now. And that's really unfortunate. So we have to get everybody informed so everybody knows that you don't fall for these ideas of what we should be doing, like natural gas, because that's still a fossil fuel. It's still emitting carbon dioxide, which is the primary
Definitely.
cause.
Definitely, Miss Anita. So let's define what is climate change first. What is climate change and how is different from weather variations?
So climate change, we're talking about human-caused climate change, and that is due to the burning of fossil fuels, oil, gas, and coal. And that's the problem where you burn it. When you produce it, you're producing like 5 to 10%. of the emissions. And when you burn it, that's the big problem, because that's where you have like 95% of the emissions of carbon dioxide, which then blanket the earth and then makes it much warmer than it otherwise would have been. So obviously carbon dioxide is good to have in the sense of warming the planet, or would be freezing on the planet, but we've extended this, we've made it much worse. So it's now gone up extremely fast, much faster than ever before. And it's very unfortunate, because it's not looking good for future generations the way we're going at it now. But we do have solutions. We just have to get on with it and work faster. So individual action, collective action, everybody has to get involved.
Definitely all over the world, people. How do greenhouse gases contribute to the global warming?
Those are greenhouse gases are the main cause. And we have then carbon dioxide is one, methane is another. And when you at the production of natural gas, which has been pushed a lot, then there is a methane that's being released as they're producing. So that's a huge contributor, because it's much more intense than carbon dioxide is, but it lasts for a shorter time. Carbon dioxide can last hundreds to thousands of years. Methane lasts for a much shorter time, but it's a much stronger greenhouse warming gas than carbon dioxide is.
What role does deforestation play in climate change?
So deforestation is when you're taking the forest out, like the Amazon, and it turns out, I mean, this we've known for a while, that the Amazon and other, especially tropical rainforests, are a sink. In other words, it sucks up the carbon dioxide because of the plants. And that is becoming a big problem, because the Amazon is suffering, and there are irreversible tipping points where the Amazon then might not be able to continue as tropical rainforest. And that's pretty bad news. So we have to protect the rainforest, and all forests actually, because we have carbon dioxide being taken in by the plants.
Certainly. Can you explain the impact of climate change on polar ice caps and glaciers?
So polar ice cap, when we're talking about ice in the water, like in the Arctic, it's disappearing. And when ice melts and it's in water already, it's like putting ice cubes in a glass. It's not going to make it overflow. But when you have the ice on land, like in Greenland, when that gets into the water, then you have sea level rise as a result, because that does increase. However, already sea ice, when that melts, it takes away the white covering over the water, and then it's dark when the ice is gone, and it'll take in more heat. And that's a problem, because the warming of the oceans will then extend that too. So you have some rising of that because of that too. But the big one is Greenland or Antarctica. When that land ice then melts, then that's sea level rise big time.
How does climate change affect global weather patterns, such as hurricanes and droughts?
So it's climate change is then affecting it in making it, we're getting more extreme weather events, and we have to worry about getting worse and worse. So when you have a warmer climate, there's more precipitation in the air. So you will have more rain. Where you normally have rain, you'll get a lot more of it. Where you have drought, then that moisture is sucked out of the ground. So you have more desert-like areas becoming worse, and because of the temperature rising. So it's all connected, and it's just going the wrong way. But we still have time. That's the part where we don't want to say, well, there's no point in doing anything. We can just sit around, because that's also what the fossil fuel industry thinks. If we don't take action, that's good for them, because they can carry on with their industry. But that's not what we want. We want to take action and stop the emission of carbon dioxide, reduce it, reduce it, reduce it, so we can get to 50% reduction by 2030, and then get to net zero by 2050.
Do you think we can do it, Miss Anita?
Well, if my, word gets out there and everybody understands it better and then gets with the program, then we could change. But we have to have a change all around. So there has to be a system-wide change. So it's not just a incremental pieces here and pieces there. That's not going to cut it. And it's just going to get worse and worse for a long time. We have to do the big changes, the big changes. So there is time, but it's really, we're running out of time in a hurry. So we have to get on with it now, and people have to take it much more seriously. So everybody's doing their work and they don't have time for anything else. But you have to think, if you have kids or you're thinking future generations at all, you should think about it's going to look very different. And people have noticed this in Europe, in the Alps. They're now seeing a lot of these little towns. They're not being able to have opening in the wintertime, which the snow is disappearing. So there's a lot less snow. Then you'll have part of climate change is also where you can have changes where it's all of a sudden it's much colder, much more snow, like you had in certain places, like in Norway this winter. It's been a ton of snow and a ton of rain. So that's very strange, because you say, well, that's not global warming. Well, it is, because it's all connected, because there's more precipitation. So you can have a ton more snow and cold that you had before, and that's all part of more extreme weather events. And that'll come and go. So that's not a yearly thing. Obviously, it's going to get just warmer because we are having a warming planet.
Yes, Miss Anita and I are combating climate change together. I wrote a book too entitled Earth Fever, where I discuss why we need to save Mother Earth. So, Miss Anita, what are the some of the most significant consequences of rising sea levels?
Consequences of rising sea levels. If you look at most of the big cities in the world are right on the coastline. So, and a lot of big cities are like big, we're talking millions of people. And obviously, that's going to affect it. So everybody has to move further inland, sort of thing. And some places that's really hard. And then you have neighboring countries right next door. So that's really, really tricky. But we have to start thinking about how to deal with this. And you see it, I mean, in Florida, the insurance companies aren't covering a lot what they did before, because they've found out that this is going to be way too expensive. And that's happened in California also. So you see a lot of things happening as a result, where things have to change. Things have to change. And we have to
Ha-
just deal with it very differently.
Definitely. How does climate change threaten biodiversity and ecosystem?
So, the same way it's affecting human beings, the species of all kinds, especially the bigger ones, some can move, but some can't move so quickly. As in finding a new area to be when it's too hot, you move up the mountainside, sort of thing, when it's cooler. But it's affecting because we've already been uh, with just human activities affecting a lot of species and eradicating some. So you have then now the chance of even more species being affected by climate change. So we are already into the sixth uh, big change on the species side.
Yes, indeed. But before we go on, Miss Anita, I want to shout out to the people listening in Norway. Because in Oslo County, I got 45% audience share. Ragaland at 24%. Viken at 8%. Buskerud, Mario Gromsdal, Vestfold, uh, Westland, and many more. Thank you, Norway, for supporting this podcast, because this podcast is created to empower writers all over the world, like Miss Anita Margaret Halvorssen. So let's talk about your latest book, The Dirty Network. How did you craft it?
It was this idea of climate change getting the word out. And I thought, I had this notion that, well, it, you had the volcano in Iceland in 2010, and airports shut down and flights were canceled. And I thought, what if people got stuck and they had to be in a situation where they actually had to listen to other people that they didn't know, and so forth? So I thought, yeah, then people could sit down and there could be talk and learn about climate change. So that became, the part of what made, I mean, Iceland's in the book. So, but it's just a chance how that happened, as far as just getting people in a situation where they're sitting down and listening to others. But that's just a piece. But the main thing is the climate change and how things are changing, and what's going on with the oil and gas industry and such. So it's all a mix where you can get some insights on the climate also.
So, in summary, Miss Anita, the Dirty Network, what is the main concept?
The main concept is that it's a journalist, Sakia, who finds out her former boyfriend is he's blown up in an explosion, and this is in Morocco. So that's where it starts because she's in Morocco, and then turns out there's a lot of stuff going on in the background in Morocco, and then she leaves for China, and there are things going on there, and then she ends up in Iceland, and this scientist she works with is then killed, and she's blamed for it. So it becomes very complicated, but I've loved it, writing it, and I think it's a great story. So yeah, no, I really enjoyed it.
If you categorize the Dirty Network, it's where belong.
So it's a thriller, definitely a thriller, and a novel then set in a lot of different places. So it's international thriller, and scientist is in there talking about climate change, and Sakia is then worried about this too, the main character in the book. And yeah, it's just crazy, and it's, I don't know, I've read a lot of spy stories, so all of that stuff comes. I mean, I think about those things, and so it was a lot of fun to write.
Miss Anita, why have you chosen to be a novel instead of, let's say, science?
The idea was that back in the day, it's not that long ago, that the newspapers were telling us about climate change, but there were two views. There was one view that it's happening, and the other view was some crazy scientists that weren't real scientists, or that had decided to take money to say something different from what the science really is. And then, so you had two different viewpoints, even if 97% of the science was pretty clear a long time ago already. And then, with that in mind, I thought, well, people get it, don't understand when the newspapers tells you two stories, and then you had the scientific reports that regular people don't usually read. So then I thought, well, people still read novels. So I thought, okay, I'll do novel. But then I'd only written, being a law professor, I'd only taught and written, and it was all pretty dry law articles in law journals. So I thought, I have to learn how to do and write a novel, because those other ones don't have anything called emotions. So I took a lot of classes to be able to write creative writing classes, to be able to write fiction. And that was a lot of fun. A whole new world opened up, and it was a lot of fun.
A lot of fun, people. So, what inspired you to become an author?
Uh, just this idea that we have to do more. We have to do more. So I thought this is one avenue for doing it.
Can you tell us about your writing process?
It was very much just ideas that came to mind. So I didn't have an outline or anything. And then one thing led to the other. And I had also been in some of these places myself. And then I did a lot of research. So yes, it was a very interesting process, because I had I hadn't done this before. So it was a question of learning how to do it and then get on with it. And the pressure was just get it done, because I'm about future generations about climate change, and we have to just do it. So it was just another way of getting the word out. I do have a sequel in mind, so that I
Wow.
have started, but it's not there yet, because I've had a few interruptions along the way.
Looking forward for that, Miss Anita. So, the Dirty Network, will be a series, quartet, or a trilogy?
That I have not decided yet. I'm still working on the sequel, so that's, I started it, and then we had to move from Colorado to New York, from a house to an apartment, a small apartment. So yeah, and then a lot of other things. And then I thought, well, doing a TEDx talk would be good too. So I got on with that, because that you have to figure out how to do those. So yeah, a lot of things coming along the way.
How do you develop your characters and plot lines?
I learned that with the creative writing class, and I would just, I don't know, I felt Sakia just evolving and being a journalist. She was just doing investigating. One thing led to another. And the plot lines, I don't know, they just came along as I kept writing. So it wasn't anything really planned out at the outset.
Wow. Interesting, Miss Anita. What challenges have you faced in your writing career?
Uh, Staying focused and just keeping on with the grunt work because it's a lot of work, obviously, and you just have to keep fighting this idea that what now, and that I didn't really get any roadblocks as far as uh, not being able to write. That, thank goodness, didn't hit me. It was more a question. Okay, so what am I going to put down? And then I did do uh, what's it called? This writing in November. A lot of people write the program that they have in the U.S., but everybody in the world can join in, where you write for a month and then
Oh,
you
yes.
try and write as much as possible. I'm just forgetting the name of it now because I haven't been doing that for a long time. Anyway, so that was really fun because then you just keep writing as much as you can every day. So you make your own goals and you can do that. And that can be used for anything, by the way, but it's a really good program.
Yes. What authors or books have influenced your writing?
So I have a few that I've really enjoyed, and I've read a lot of spy stories. Daniel Silva, John le Carre, who's also, I mean, his real name was David Cornwell, and then I read one Stephen King, The Stand, which was amazing, and then I read Tess Geriston's more recently, the Spy Coast thriller, and that was good. The Martini Book Club, and then Donna Leon, which is all of her Guido Brunetti mystery series. It's in Venice, which is a lot of fun. So I've had a lot of different ones, but usually it's kind of thriller, mystery, suspense, spy stories, that kind of thing. I've read a lot of.
How do you approach research for your book, The Dirty Network?
So with reading, I got and just real stories too. So you pick up a lot of things along the way. And then I did research. I had one person who read, and it starts in Morocco, and I've had several that thought I'd been to Morocco, but it was all about research and reading uh, travel books about Morocco to find out exactly what things look like on the street, sort of thing. So you feel you're there because that's what it's all about. You got to make people be in the moment with you.
Being, yes, being the moment, people. Can you share a memorable moment from your writing career?
When I actually had finished it, that was a memorable moment in the
Definitely.
writing. Yeah, that was probably the one I can think of right off the bat. But just writing. I mean, I had thought about this for a while, and then I just visited New York City, and there was a server called Sakia, and then I thought, well, that sounds like a cool name. And then Morocco, I think she was from Morocco, and then that became the place. So it was just very random how these things came together. And I've been to Iceland a few times, and then China I went to once. So yeah, I went down the Yangtze River, which also happens in the story.
What advice do you have for aspiring writers out there?
I think there's a lot of patience involved and a lot of just stick to it. If I don't know, it's just, and if you have the passion about something, you should just go for it if you can. So yeah, because it's the day to day thing, and that's always tricky to get that lined up. I mean, if it's not your full time job, to be able to squeeze it in between. And I know people get up at 5 in the morning to write before they go to work, that sort of thing. So it's really tricky scheduling, but yeah, it's a lot of fun because the stories come together eventually, and then you just have to have perseverance and stick to it to get it all done.
How do you balance writing with the other aspects of your life?
That's the tricky one because that easily eats up your time. Other things come in the way, and you have to always set up a system where you can actually be on your own, not disturbed. If you have kids, so you put up a sign on the outside of your whatever area you're sitting in that you're not to be disturbed, but that's tricky for some. So it all depends. If you can go, I went to a lot of cafes. I sat and wrote in a lot of cafes. So that worked for me just to have area and space where I could focus.
What are some themes or topics that you are passionate about exploring in your writing?
So climate change then obviously is the main focus in any writing I'll do, and how people and how governments and how countries are dealing with it, because that's all very different. And some are starting to understand how this all works, but many are just hesitating. So it's just not helpful. We have to really work much faster and much harder on this.
How do you handle feedback or criticism of your work?
Just take a deep breath and see where you can make things better. Because obviously, if it's better, it's going to be more. If you are planning on writing and selling books, then the better it is, the better chance of it getting out to a publisher and then being sold. And yeah, so that's the goal. Make it really good.
Well said, Miss Anita. But before we go on, I'm inviting you to listen to my other podcast, Food 101, our fourth season, with Chef Alessandro, one of the best executive chefs in one of the five-star restaurants in downtown Toronto. So please do listen to our latest episode. We talk about our Valentine's recipe because today is a love month. Plus our book Food 101 Volume 12 Italian Cuisine. Plus one more, our books are out, not only one, but 13 volumes, people. Food 101, Volume 1, Basics, until 13 is only the books that you need how to create a delicious food. Available on Amazon and leading online bookstores worldwide. So, Miss Anita, what is your short term and long term goals in writing?
Getting focused on the sequel again is one I would really like to do, because I had many is the next book coming. So I thought, right, that needs, yeah. So, and short term, I do write articles for newspapers, that sort of thing, also, and debate kind of things on climate. So any way I can is to get the word out so we can move faster as a planet,
Yes,
the whole world getting act, taking more action.
and definitely. All over the world need to take action because this is for our generations to come. So,
Right.
Miss Anita, how do you think the publishing industry is changing and what does mean for the others?
Well, I think it's changing in a hurry, and then this AI is changing a lot of things too. I guess now some people are writing books based on AI, so that's curious, interesting. Uh, but otherwise, publishing industry where you have already a lot of different tools that weren't there before. So I think there's a lot of changes going on as far as how books are published, and yeah, the rights, and but the copyright is still there, so that's good. But yeah, it's a lot of changes going on. So who knows where it's going to be in the end?
What is something you wish you had known when you first started writing?
How long it would take as far as action on climate change, because I feel we've been saying that for a while, and yeah, we haven't really taken enough action. But in my writing process, when I first started, I had no clue about anything because I'd never written a fiction book before. My doctorate was published, so that was my first book, a nonfiction, but never written fiction before. And yes, that was a very interesting process.
How do you hope your book, The Dirty Network, will be remembered or appreciated by the future generations?
Breakthrough book. Everybody understood it much better. So yeah, and then we got the planet we wanted, which is actually, if we all take action much faster, we'll have a cleaner planet. It'll be better for everybody because there's so many people, thousands and thousands, dying of pollution every year as it is right now. So by having cleaner, no more carbon dioxide types because of burning of fossil fuels and all of that, then you'd have a uh, much better planet for everybody to live on. And then with all these changes in the systems, it would be also looking at something called climate justice, which is really important because it's more the vulnerable people and developing countries in the world who are suffering the most right now, and that's just going to get worse. So yeah, it's tricky. It's really a lot of things that have to be kept in mind. But once we can deal with these things, then it's going to be a better world to live in for everybody.
Yes, people, let's combat climate change together. As we said, this is for our generations to come. So, Miss Anita, can you please invite our listeners to support your novel, The Dirty Network?
Yes. I think it's something anybody can read. It's really exciting, and I've heard several people say it's a page turner and they couldn't put it down. And it's got a lot of suspense and a lot of things, a lot of quick moving. I mean, a lot of stuff going on. That's for sure. So yeah, and it's international. It's all over the place. So it's kind of fun in that way too. And then there's Sakia, the main character, who has a husband and two two boys, and her work situation. So it's just a lot of fun to read.
Yes, people, let's support Miss Anita because if you support her, more books to come about climate change. So, Miss Anita, thank you for your time.
Thank you so much, Daniel.